Welcome back to the deep dive. If there's one topic that touches every single person on this planet yet, it remains an absolute enigma, it's got to be dreams.
Absolutely. They're this perfect nightly blend of the deeply personal, your own fears, your desires, and just the universally baffling.
Right. We spend, a third of our lives doing something we don't really understand at all.
And that's our mission today. We want to go beyond the dream dictionary stuff.
Yeah, and ask some genuinely radical questions. We're going to look at dreams through three lenses. First, as these complex cognitive tools.
Second, as a window into a shared or collective unconscious.
And finally, as these strange, meaningful coincidences, a phenomenon called synchronicity. We've pulled together neuroscience, clinical cases, even some philosophy that honestly borders on theoretical physics.
It's a huge scope. We're really moving from the individual psyche out to the very boundaries of the self and the world. And to frame this, you almost have to shift your thinking away from hard, fixed boundaries.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think of a cup. There's a clean line separating inside from outside. But what if the boundary is more like a fractal?
Okay, a fractal boundary. That's a big idea.
It is, but stick with it. These boundaries are theorized as being semi-permeable and just infinitely deep. So if your psyche has fractal boundaries, it suggests an openness between you and others and you and the world.
So a tiny sliver of experience, like a dream, could shed light on the whole system.
Exactly. And potentially connect you to others.
All right, so let's start with the most fundamental question. What even is a dream? Because even the basic timing of it all is up for debate.
It is. When you look at the history, you usually start with that classic psychological contrast. On one side, you have the traditional Freudian view.
Right, which is that dreams are basically wish fulfillment or a mashup of memories from your day, very focused on your personal history.
But then C.G. Jung comes along and offers this massive redirection. For Jung, dreams aren't just about what you repress. They serve a vital, active purpose. He called it a compensatory function.
Compensatory. So if you're too focused on your career, your dream might sort of push back with images about family or spirituality.
Precisely. It's trying to nudge your psyche back toward equilibrium. And he believed this process links us all through a vast well of shared ancestral knowledge, the collective unconscious.
Which shows up as those universal symbols, the archetypes.
Yes. And for Jung, dreams are central to our lifelong journey toward becoming whole, which he called individuation.
Okay, but regardless of which interpretation you lean toward, the standard assumption we all make, the received view, is that dreams are real experiences.
They happen in real time while we sleep, and the story we tell in the morning is a pretty accurate report of what happened.
That assumption, though, faces this really jarring philosophical challenge.
Oh, from Daniel Dennett. It's a wild one.
It is. He basically hypothesized that dreams are not conscious experiences during sleep at all. Instead, they're just narratives that your brain instantly makes up, fabricates the moment you wake up.
So they're false memories of an experience you never actually had.
Exactly. And the anecdote used to support this is genuinely shocking. It's the story of the French physicist Alfred Maury.
The guillotine dream.
Guillotine dream. He dreamt this entire, incredibly detailed, dramatic narrative of the French Revolution, leading right up to the moment he's being executed. And then he wakes up.
He wakes up because the headboard of his bed fell directly onto his neck.
The timing is just. It's too perfect. The dream narrative seems way too long and logical to fit into that instant.
So Dennett argued that the sound and the sensation of the falling headboard triggered the brain, which then instantly fabricated the entire story backwards to fit the stimulus.
It's just retrospective fiction. And that thought alone, that your brain might be lying to you every morning, is deeply unsettling. How do you even counter that?
But you counter it with some spectacular science, specifically involving lucid dreaming.
Which is when you become aware inside the dream that you're dreaming.
Right, and that state allows for actual communication. Researchers set up these experiments where participants agreed beforehand on a specific series of eye movements, like, 2 lefts, 2 rights.
And they would perform them when they became lucid during REM sleep.
And they did. The fact that the sleeping subject could voluntarily signal a prearranged message is the closest thing we have to hard proof. It shows genuine conscious awareness during the dream state, not just a story made up afterward.
Okay, so if we establish that dreams are a genuine conscious experience, let's ask the next big question. Why? Do they actually serve an evolutionary purpose?
This is where the debate really splits. You have adaptationism on one side, the idea that dreams help us survive, and pluralism on the other.
So the adaptationist camp, driven by the threat simulation theory, suggests dreams are a survival mechanism.
Think of it like a nightly training session in a VR chamber. The brain specializes in simulating threatening scenarios, escaping a predator, navigating a social conflict.
And by running these simulations, even if they're bizarre, our brain enhances our perception and our avoidance behaviors in real life.
Exactly. And you see strong support for this in the relationship between real-life trauma like PTSD and recurring threat dreams. The system seems hardwired to practice resolving threats.
But then there's the opposing view, the spandrel thesis.
Right. A spandrel is an architectural term for that triangular space you get when you put a round dome on a square base, and has no function. It's just an unavoidable side effect.
So this view says dreams are just cognitive debris, an unavoidable byproduct of a complex brain doing its nightly maintenance.
They're just free riders, no direct fitness-enhancing function at all.
But even setting strict survival aside, we definitely know dreams play a huge role in creativity and problem solving.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in that hypnagogic state, that sweet spot right as you're drifting off to sleep.
I've read about experiments where people struggling with complex math problems could solve them way faster after just resting in that state.
It's like the non-conscious mind is actively reorganizing information without the rigid constraints of waking logic.
And the ultimate historical example of this has to be the chemist Friedrich Kekulé.
The benzene ring. He'd been struggling for years to figure out its structure.
And he famously dreamt of snakes biting their own tails, the Ouroboros symbol, and that gave him the insight. It had to be a closed ring.
That example is actually the perfect bridge to a really cutting-edge theory from computer science, the overfitted brain hypothesis.
Okay, let's unpack that. Think of your brain like an AI model. It's constantly absorbing your daily input, the same desk, the same commute.
The same statistically similar conversations. And this puts your brain in danger of something called overfitting.
Which means it becomes too specialized to its repetitive data.
Yeah.
And it can't generalize to new situations. It gets brittle.
So the overfitted brain hypothesis suggests the whole purpose of dreams is to fight this by generating sparse, hallucinatory, bizarre, and totally non-repetitive content.
Data that's way outside your normal daily inputs.
The brain basically performs a neurological dropout. It deliberately corrupts its own data to stay flexible.
So the bizarre, nonsensical nature of dreams isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's a necessary corrective mechanism to keep you adaptive.
Which brings us to one of the most exciting parts of this, stepping outside the individual self entirely.
Right, talking about dreams not as purely individual events, but as communal, maybe even predictive experiences like in many indigenous cultures.
For many indigenous American cultures, like the Yanomami, dreams are profoundly important. They're seen as real events with collective impact. Dreaming isn't just about you, it's a way of entering realities you can't access while you're awake.
So when a Yanomami person dreams, their PU2P?
Their image double, yeah. It detaches and travels to meet distant or deceased relatives, and those experiences are considered real events that might require action in the waking world.
That just completely challenges the Western idea of the self being neatly contained inside your body.
And that's where we circle back to that idea of a fractal epistemology. If the boundary between you and the world is fractal, semi-permeable, infinitely deep, it suggests there are open channels for unconscious, shared communication.
The relational unconscious.
Exactly. And when those channels are open, conditions are ripe for these uncanny connections to happen. And that is the context for synchronicity.
Which Jung defined as events that coincide in time and seem meaningfully related.
But have absolutely no discoverable causal connection. It's in a causal connecting principle, a meaningful coincidence.
And these tend to pop up during really emotional, chaotic periods of life.
They often signal a big change is coming, or in a clinical setting, maybe the unconscious melding of two different minds.
What really blows the doors off this concept for me is that it wasn't just psychology, it stretched right into theoretical physics.
The collaboration between Carl Jung and the Nobel laureate physicist Wolfgang Pauli.
What they proposed was called dual aspect monism. That sounds incredibly complicated.
It is, but the core idea is that mind and matter aren't separate things that influence each other. Instead, they are complementary aspects, like two different sides of the same coin.
Different perspectives on a single, deeper, underlying reality.
Yes, what Jung called the unus mundus, the one world. They were looking for a single root reality that explains why meaning and matter can align without one directly causing the other.
Okay, let's apply this to a real-world example, the Sabina case. This was a long-term therapy using dream analysis to process severe relational trauma.
Right. And Sabina's dreams frequently featured themes of open boundaries. She dreamed she was entering the therapist's home, or the therapist was entering hers. It symbolized this deep psychological access they had.
But the therapy hit a total impasse. They were stuck.
They were, and then Sabina brought in a dream she couldn't interpret. And as the therapist was listening, they suddenly realized it was a slightly altered version of their own childhood dream.
Wait, their own dream from when they were a child?
Yes. The image was the Statue of Liberty appearing at a giant scale, and then, upon waking in the dream, appearing as a miniature replica. A structural fractal image that actually mirrored the therapist's own intellectual interests later in life.
That is an unbelievable transmission. It's more than a coincidence.
It was cited as a moment of transpersonal transmission. It broke the impasse not by clarifying Sabina's psyche, but by forcing the therapist to recognize their own blind spot, their countertransference.
So the shared dream acted like a key. It opened up a channel of empathy.
And helped the therapist realize their frustration with Sabina was actually rooted in their own personal history of betrayal.
Wow. Okay, moving from that intimate clinical setting, what about controlled experiments? There was work on experimental dream telepathy.
At the Maimonides Medical Center, yes. They used sophisticated lab tech to test for psi phenomena. A sender would be isolated and focus on a randomly selected art print while the receiver was in REM sleep.
Then they'd wake the receiver up, get the dream report, and outside judges would try to match the dream to the target image. It was all designed to eliminate any possibility of cheating or sensory cues.
And the most dramatic, though preliminary example of this involved using a huge, unsuspecting crowd as the senders.
The Grateful Dead example.
Technically, it was the Holy Modal Rounders, but close enough. The entire audience at a rock concert, about 1,500 people, served as simultaneous senders.
What was the target?
The target involved eagles and a mythological phoenix. 5 distant receivers were just told the general location of the concert.
And did it work?
2 of them reported highly specific correspondences. One had an impression of something mythological, like a griffin or a phoenix, and another visualized seagulls flying over water. A clear thematic alignment. The correlation rates defied chance.
Speaking of things that defied chance, we have to finish with the physical manifestation of all this, the Pauli effect.
Yes. The great physicist Wolfgang Pauli, who co-developed this theory with Jung, was so closely associated with synchronicity that, well, things broke around him.
Complicated experimental apparatus would mysteriously fail or even collapse whenever he was merely present. We're just walking past the lab.
There's that famous story where a complex piece of equipment suddenly broke in a lab in Göttingen. It was later verified that Pauli's train had stopped for a moment at the Göttingen railroad station at the exact moment of the mishap.
Even though he never even got off the train.
It was this a causal, inexplicable power of psychophysical correlation that just seemed to follow him everywhere.
So from survival rehearsal to shared consciousness to physics-defying coincidences, it's clear dreams are far from random mental garbage.
Not at all. They're purposeful, highly contextual, and deeply meaningful, whether for your own psychological growth or for signaling some kind of cosmic synchronization.
And bringing it back to that fascinating overfitted brain hypothesis. The idea that dreams have to be bizarre to force our brains to generalize and stay flexible. That raises a powerful question about modern life, doesn't it?
It really does. Our daily inputs are increasingly controlled, curated, and statistically similar. If dreams evolve to expose us to corrupted reality to prevent cognitive overfitting, what does that suggest about our massive collective appetite for fiction and the arts?
That's the ultimate thought, that maybe art, novels, films, even really creative video games, maybe they serve as our artificial dreams.
They provide the necessary bizarre out-of-distribution input to keep our waking cognition flexible and adaptive.
Keeping our minds ready for anything in a world that is becoming, well, statistically too familiar.
The arts as necessary. Constant maintenance for the human operating system. Something to think about as you settle in for your own nightly data corruption tonight.
Indeed. Until the next deep dive.